Today was a monumental loss for prosecutors in the Diddy case. They were, I wish there were a bigger word than the word losers, because that's what they are. This case would never have been brought if the only issues were whether he transported a worker across state lines to have. There is no way they would have done it. I mean, you look at this case, and they had 70 Homeland Security agents at Diddy's homes in Miami and LA, and they spent a fortune putting this case together.
I view this was a shock. As this trial unfolded, I can't sit up here and say to you today that it's a shock. Because time and time and time again, we repeatedly asked on this show, where is the case for trafficking being made? Where is the case for racketeering and those RICO charges? Where is that being made? And the jury spoke earlier today and said it wasn't made. Not enough to our satisfaction. And as a result, we are going to let him out. What exactly did they let him out on? Let's go over that again.
Not guilty verdict on racketeering. A not guilty verdict on sex trafficking as it relates to Cassie. A not guilty verdict on sex trafficking as it relates to Jane. Those were the reasons why this case was brought. They said he was a racketeer. The jury said no. They said that he was Cassie and coercing Cassie and Jane and forcing them into these freak-offs. The jury didn't buy it.
The long-running trial of Shah Diddy Combs is nearing its conclusion, and it's ending with explosive twists. What began as an intense legal showdown, with prosecutors presenting serious allegations, is now unraveling fast, one after another. Key charges have been thrown out, leaving the prosecution on shaky ground. Most significantly, the jury has dismissed the trafficking charge involving Casey and Jane, a major pillar of the case. But the most devastating blow came with the dismissal of the RICO charges, which have been central to the entire trial. So what does all this mean for Diddy's future? Let's break it down.
I'm with Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air right now because the federal judge in the Sean Diddy Combs trial has just denied bail for Combs hours after a split verdict in the racketeering and sex trafficking case against him. On the third day of deliberations, the jury finding Combs not guilty on 3 of 5 counts, acquitting him of the most serious charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Combs guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Each count carries a maximum of up to 10 years.
Diddy has experienced a surprising turn of fortune in this trial. Although convicted on 2 out of 5 charges, he narrowly avoided the most serious ones. The racketeering and sex trafficking charges, particularly involving Jane and Casey Ventura, were dismissed, marking a major victory for his defense team. Still, the battle is far from over. Diddy was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation for prostitution, each carrying a potential sentence of up to 10 years in prison. While not as severe as the charges he dodged, these convictions cast a long shadow over his future. Wasting no time after securing 3 favorable verdicts, Diddy filed a motion for bail before his sentencing. Confident and hopeful, he reached out to his family to discuss next steps, assuring them he'd remain out of custody. But that optimism was short-lived. The judge swiftly denied his bail request, stating that the defense failed to provide sufficient grounds for release at this stage. Despite key wins in the courtroom, Diddy remains in custody, for now, awaiting sentencing with his fate still uncertain.
Sean Combs entered court just a moment ago, looking upbeat. He greeted his family, who crammed into the gallery, all in one bench, his mother, sons, twin daughters. And I think he was anticipating that he would be released following the mixed verdict, especially the acquittal on all of the violent crimes. But the judge immediately sat down at the bench, started reading his decision, saying bail is denied. He would not be released prior to sentencing because the judge said his incarceration is required based on what he was convicted of, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. The judge said the defense did not make any successful arguments to say that that expectation should be over.
Stephen A. Smith didn't mince words when sharing his thoughts on the case, weighing in with sharp commentary on its surprising turns. From the outset, he said he never believed the racketeering and trafficking charges against P. Diddy would hold up. According to Smith, the prosecution tried to stretch the narrative, linking the lesser transportation charges to a broader racketeering scheme, but the connection simply wasn't there. As he put, the jury delivered a clear message. The evidence just wasn't strong enough to support the prosecution's claims.
To a lot of you, this was a shock. As this trial unfolded, I can't sit up here and say to you today that it's a shock. Because time and time again, we repeatedly asked on this show, where is the case for trafficking being made? Where is the case for racketeering and those RICO charges? Where is that being made? And the jury spoke earlier today and said it wasn't made. Not enough to our satisfaction. And as a result, we are going to let him out. What exactly did they let him out on? Let's go over that again.
Stephen A. Smith went on to say that many analysts now view this trial as a significant win for P. Diddy. According to the insiders he's spoken with, there's growing belief that Diddy may not even serve the full 10 years tied to his convictions, a dramatic shift from the life sentence he once faced. Some are even speculating that he might avoid prison altogether. Stephen A. credited this dramatic turnaround to prosecution's failure to present a compelling case. Despite the severity of the charges, they simply couldn't deliver a convincing argument. Ultimately, their inability to prove the most critical elements may not only have spared Diddy a life behind bars, but could potentially set him on a path to complete freedom. The narrative has clearly shifted, and attention is now turning to just how major a victory this could be for the hip-hop icon.
Worst case scenario is that he could be sentenced to 10 years in prison for each, okay? And that he could face up to 20 years. Everybody that I've spoken to, and I'm about to bring you two legal experts to explain all of this to you. Everybody that I've spoken to said, forget 20 years. He's not even getting 10. In all likelihood, it won't be 5. And there's a slim possibility that he'll get 2 to 3 years. So you've got people out there speculating that it could be 1-0 as it pertains to the amount of time that P. Diddy spends in jail. Why on earth would that happen?
Following the verdict, Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, addressed the media with a confident and fiery statement. He called the outcome a monumental victory over a prosecution that, in his words, had thrown everything they had at Diddy in an effort to bring him down. But in the end, Agnifilo declared, they failed to stop him. He went on to commend the jury for their focus and diligence, noting that they carefully weighed every piece of evidence before reaching their decision.
Today's a great victory. It's a great victory for Sean Combs. It's a great victory for the jury system. You saw that the Southern District of New York prosecutors came at him with all that they had. They're not stopping, but one thing stands between all of us and a prison, and that is a jury of 12 citizens. And we had a wonderful jury. They listened to every word, and they got the situation right, or certainly right enough. They acquitted him of the sex trafficking, which he was absolutely innocent of. They acquitted him of the racketeering conspiracy that he was absolutely innocent.
Mark Agnifilo made it clear that the jury's decision to acquit Diddy of the racketeering and trafficking charges was a powerful affirmation of his innocence. He emphasized that these verdicts proved Diddy had been wrongly accused, and the outcome reflected the strength and credibility of their defense. According to Agnifilo, the jury's ruling wasn't just a legal win. It was a clear indication that truth had triumphed over the prosecution's flawed narrative.
And all of the components to it. The kidnapping, he was innocent of that. The arson, he was innocent of that. The obstructing justice, he was innocent of that. And that is no longer just me saying that. That is the verdict of our...
In his closing arguments, Mark Agnifilo had already forecasted the outcome that would soon follow. The defense came out swinging. painting the prosecution's case as grossly exaggerated and aggressively challenging the charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for prostitution. Agnifilo argued there was simply no substantial evidence to support these allegations. He went even further, branding the entire trial as a false trial, a case built more on speculation than on solid facts. Making a strong case for Diddy's innocence, Agnifilo firmly stated that the accusations had no merit. He also addressed a central point in the prosecution's narrative, Diddy's lifestyle, clarifying that it was entirely consensual, best described, he said, as a swinger's lifestyle, not a criminal enterprise.
Where a juror says, I don't care what the judge is telling me. The right thing to do is something else. That's what it's feeling like to me.
So if you're going to guess here, it's that the 11 are saying convict him on one of the
something.
Counts.
That's what it feels like to me.
So when the note was handed to the judge explained what was going on to the prosecutors and to Diddy's defense. They all came up and had a meeting about this. What Mark Agnifilo, Diddy's co-lead attorney, said was, just tell them it's really early, Judge, and they should get back to figuring it out.
Although Diddy may have secured a major win in the criminal trial, his legal battles are far from over. A looming civil lawsuit still poses a serious threat, one that could carry major financial consequences. Unlike the criminal case, Diddy's freedom isn't on the line this time, but the risk of substantial monetary damages remains very real. The civil charges could result in hefty payouts, making this a completely different kind of fight. While he may have avoided prison, the outcome of the civil case could still leave a lasting impact on his future. The stakes remain high, and how this next chapter unfolds will determine just how heavy a financial toll Diddy may have to face in the aftermath of it all.
So while he's out of the woods criminal-wise, he still has those civil lawsuits. However, it's important to know when you're talking about civil lawsuits, you're talking about money. So he's out of the woods in the sense of that his liberty is no longer at stake. Probably his financial status is at stake, but not his liberty. Also important to remember that when we're talking about those civil lawsuits, while he may have escaped criminal liability, the burden of proof is completely different when it comes to civil lawsuits. It's by preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, 51% to 49% of whether he's liable on those counts that the lawsuit is based on, as opposed to in the criminal world, it was beyond a reason.
The resulting financial damages could deal a serious blow to the music mogul point. One of the most compelling aspects of the trial was the role of a jury, particularly one steadfast juror who refused to be swayed and insisted that Diddy was not the leader of a criminal enterprise. His unwavering stance exposed critical weaknesses in the prosecution's arguments and may have been instrumental in the final verdict. This high-profile case has sparked intense debate about the justice system and the way this case was prosecuted, with many critics arguing that the prosecution focused too much on sensationalism and too little on hard evidence. For now, Diddy has survived the storm, but the path ahead remains uncertain. With a civil lawsuit still pending, the next chapter in the saga is just beginning. What are your thoughts on the verdict in Sean Diddy Combs' trial? Was the prosecution's case too weak? Or do you think Diddy should have been convicted? How do you view the jury's role, especially that of the lone juror who stood firm? And with the civil case looming, what do you think lies ahead for Diddy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take on this gripping legal battle.